I'm going to record this one in case you fail to attend the lecture, then you can recover the lecture and watch the YouTube. Okay. Now, we go to the division of responsibilities. Okay. As we know, in budget, there are the relationship between federal government and the states and localities are complex and are not well described, okay, by a simple look at expenditures. There are important subject matter and reasons for the budget to consider. One is the planned approach to the government activities. Okay, the administration through the party that they belong is going to plan for their activities in which the budget must depend upon. Okay, so take note of the word government activities. On what are their plans, then that will form part of the budget or where the budget should go. And then number two is the integrated approach of fiscal operations. Okay, meaning all the aspects, all approaches for the operation of the money will be looked into in the preparation of the budget. Okay, that is integrated approach. And number three is affecting economic activities. Okay, so there are factors to consider into in budget planning. One of which is the economic activities, like if there are calamities that a country experience for the year, then the budget might be inclined to their problem on typhoon, for example, and other calamities. Okay, so as we know that during calamity, agriculture will be badly affected. So therefore, the budget must be inclined to agricultural aspect. Okay, so that is economic activities. Number four is instrument of economic policy. So there are instruments in policy making in economics. Okay, like for example, the demand or how many people will be enjoyed by the project or a budget. It may only be applicable to rich people. Okay, like for example, if the planning or if the budget is only for DPW, it's like public road, for example. Okay, take note, in public road, only a few people might enjoy, like those who own the car only. Okay, so or those who own the business, but for farmers it may not be so important to them, or it has no use at all. Okay, and then we have fifth, index government's functioning. Okay, for example, if the right now, as we know, we experience pandemic, so probably the budget will be for health. Okay, we would expect later on that the highest, of course, it's not always the health, because the constitution provides that the highest budget must be for education. But in times of calamity, then perhaps the higher budget, not necessarily the education, might goes to the Department of Health. Okay, so another that we have to consider is about public accountability. Okay, as we know that in deciding whatever will be the priority of the government would rely on politics. It's not only because it is needed, but because of politics. We know politicians might win up the heart of the people by coming up with a project that might be applicable to them, or they will make a project, or their budget will go into a project that will win the heart of the electorate. Okay, more so now that there will be election, okay, upcoming election, perhaps we would look into what are the demands or what would be the project that would turn out to be a vote for their candidate. Okay, as we know in experience, projects will come only a year or even prior to the election, so that by a month before election, then there will be a turnout, okay, of the votes by coming up with new project. Okay, people will remember the project by the politician. Okay, if there is project, then they always remember the politician, so they're going to vote for that because of the project they have. Okay, so that how it works. Not only purely economic reason that the project will arise. Okay, it sometimes arise by politics. Okay, that how it works. It's not only because it is needed. Okay, simply because it's the will of the politician. For example, if you are a politician that's a party to the president, eventually when you have a project, it will be carried out. It will be approved. Why? Because they want also to win in the election. Then we go to allocation of resources. Okay, so of course it would also depend on the number of beneficiaries. Okay, there are of course department which is not so important, and in fact it only caters a few. Example, not to discount the DNR. Well, it doesn't require a bigger budget because more or less it's only on monitoring. Unlike DPWH or DepEd, where there is really a required number for a government to spend on. Okay. Otherwise, we cannot just left our children uneducated, or our projects like buildings and road, for example, not developed. Okay? Okay, those are the things that they have to consider as well. Another is GDP growth. Okay? So if the growth, for example, okay, as we know now, almost all countries really suffer the GDP growth. They do not have any income at all. Okay, as we know that even in the first quarter of the epidemic, there is really no income at all, meaning the GDP, the gross domestic product, is really zero. Okay, which is why right now we cannot expect more lockdown because there will be no more salary for government employees. Okay, so what will happen if there will be no salaries or no projects or no programs? You will not be perhaps studying in normal. Okay, and government employees, police, and other officers that guards the pandemic, they may not be working at all. Okay, so those are the things that they have to consider, and that also become part of our decision making. Okay, like should we continue the lockdown despite the increasing number of the infected from virus, or should we open the economy so that we can pay for our debts, okay, and pay for the employees. Otherwise, there will be no budget for the next project. Okay, we have number 9, elimination of poverty. Yes, we know. Well, the prime duty of government is really to bridge the gap between rich and poor. That's why most of the government projects should be for the poor because they are the most um, highly affected sector in the government. They are the minority because they have less in life, and yet they are the majority because they are many. In fact, they constitute more than half or more than three-fourths in the government in the entire Philippines. The number 10 is the reduction of inequality in the distribution of income. Okay, so well, what I can observe now is that there is really inequality. Okay, and you can see this during pandemic. What do you see? Most of the income now goes to government, and people in the private sector perhaps has no income at all, zero, because of lockdown. Okay, so government's project should perhaps be a gap between the rich and the poor, and to solve inequality. Okay, so more or less the salary now, if possible, should be equal. Like, if you are working in government, perhaps you are paid higher because of the pandemic. You are paid even if you are not working, while those in the private sector, they have zero income. Okay, so that is inequality. So government should um, provide measures, perhaps limit the greed of having all while others have zero at all. And what they do now, okay, they do not actually share. In fact, in my observation, there is really great inequality during the pandemic. Okay, people are starving, especially those employees in the private sector. They were unemployed now. Many of them, more than 50% of the entire, or more than 40% of the entire working force. While those in government, well, of course, that would also benefit me. But upon seeing this, we cannot just simply close our eyes and see the people suffering. Okay, so as much as possible, government as well should address the problem of inequality. Okay, so tax and non-tax receipt. Okay, so government should be looking into the tax and non-tax receipt. This job is the duty of the Bureau of Internal Revenue. Okay, there are, of course, good taxpayers. The tax is collected regularly. Others are, well, they're not good taxpayers. Sometimes they even evade payment of tax. As we know, in latest issue, we have the ABCBN. Okay, supposedly they're paying higher tax and yet they register their corporation in PEZA, Philippine Export Zone, which has a benefit, okay, a tax benefit, which they only paid lesser compared to other corporations. As a comparison, they may paid higher, okay, and some of their employees were regularized, while ABS-CBN, they didn't pay tax. They're so wise, they um, apply all legal remedies just to avoid paying tax. Although it's legal, in fact, it's called tax avoidance. They were able to register in a corporation that pays lesser tax. Okay. That's the reason, in fact, why their franchise was not renewed. Why? Because a franchise in EBS in the media is actually a privilege. Okay. It is not a right that you can demand anytime, but it is a privilege that will only be granted at exceptional cases. Okay, so you have to prove that you are worthy of that franchise, unless that the franchise will not be granted to you if you do legal means in order for you not to pay the tax. That's what they did. Okay. Now, by the way, I'm not for or against it, but that is just the reason why, because of the concept of tax. Okay, that's the reason, actually, the biggest reason why the franchise was not renewed. Now, we go to the basic concept of budgeting. What is fund? It is defined. Okay. Defined as a government has taken several meanings or connotations. It is sometimes used to refer as an appropriation, which is legislative authorization. Okay, the word legislative simply means that the fund is given power by the legislative branch, meaning the councilor if it is in the local level, or congressman in the national level. It could be from Congress or in senator or members of the House of Rep. For the budget of the Philippines, it must originate under the Constitution from the lower house. The reason is that the lower house, or simply the district representatives, knows well of the need of the district in which they represent. Okay, for district and for sectoral representative, like different sectors like Gabriela for women, urban poor, we have other sectoral groups which constitute 20% in Congress. They will make a law or budget based on the group that they represent and the needs of the group that they represent. Okay, So to spend or allotment in which is authorized by the Department of Budget and Management to obligate, okay, or such or as actual cash available. So the fund will be disbursed by the Department of Budget and Management. Okay, so there is some money that you're going to ask in the Congress. Congress will approve it, and then the disbursement thereof will be through the Department of Budget and Management. You cannot easily get the money without approval from the Congress of the allocation. Okay, so the BM is the one who will issue an order for you to get the money. Okay, upon approval from the Congress, we will discuss later on the steps. Okay, we go along. As early as now, it's good for you to know the meaning of fund. Now, what is the basis? What basis law governs the use of government fund? Okay, so well, of course, all activities in the government must be rooted from the Constitution. I want to know if you are following me because I am talking and I didn't hear anything. Can you can you see the word that I highlighted?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good, good.
Yes.
Okay. I'll check first if there are still pending students who wants to be admitted. Wala na, no? Okay. There's no more. Then I'll proceed. Now, um, what is the basis for the government? Okay, all all funds must be approved, okay, by the body. And what is that body? It is the Congress. Okay, the Constitution provides, okay, the rule on it. What is that? Article 6, Section 29. No money shall be paid by the Treasury, meaning refers to government fund, except in pursuance of an appropriation made by law. The appropriation refers to the preparation of the budget by each agency. Okay, example, DepEd, Cebu Normal, okay, and all government offices. They're going to prepare it after 1 month from the SONA of the president. Okay, which means probably by September, there will be a budget call and preparation of the budget. Okay. Now, the money that they're going to prepare will soon be defended. They're going to defend it that if that is really important and reasonable. Okay. So Congress then through its committee will scrutinize. Okay. So as early as now, it's good for you to know that appropriation, there must be an appropriation made by law. If it is approved, then it's not yet a law. It is still in the lower house. Okay. Later on, if it is already okay, then president will sign. That becomes now part of Philippine law, or what we call as the GAA. Okay. So the preparation, it's called an appropriation bill, and later on when it is signed, become the appropriation law or the GAA. Okay, General Appropriations Act, or simply the budget of the Philippines for the next year. Now, the quoted provision of the Constitution also establishes the need for all the government entities to undergo a budgeting process to secure funds for use in carrying out their mandated functions, programs, and activities. Now, what is the basis of the agency on their budget plan? It's always based on the mandate. For example, Cebu Noir, where will you read the projects supposedly? Or where will you get its mandated functions, programs, and activities? It is found in the charter. Okay? In DepEd, it is found in the law that creates DepEd or in the Constitution. That's where you find the function. For example, Cebu Normal. What is the function of Cebu Normal? To educate students. Okay, so the projects of the Cebu Normal will always be based on education. They cannot get any other budget other than education, or for the salary of faculties under the personal services, or for project of a building under capital outlay. Okay, so and the payment of electricity under MOOE. Okay, miscellaneous and other operating expenses. So for previous years, if that is the amount that they requested, there's no reason that it will go down unless employees were dead because of COVID. Probably the budget will low under PS because there's no more employees. And of course, if there are other projects that may increase, okay, it depends on the mandated functions. Take note of that. Where can you find it? In the chapter that creates the agency. Now, we go to the third. How are government funds appropriated? Okay, so here's the step. Very important. Okay, I want you to know this one by heart. Okay, so funds of the government entities. Okay, when I say government entities, all government that comprises the government or the corporation of the government or the Republic of the Philippines, which is composed of several departments, okay, including of course the school where you are enrolled, which is a government. Okay, so are appropriated or authorized the following process with the following major steps. Okay, there are only 5 major steps. Okay, but very important. Okay, but it takes a very long process. It could even half a year in preparing for these steps. Okay, or even more than a year. I don't know, not really more than a year, but because the law provides that there should be a budget. Otherwise, if it happened the other year, they were not able to approve a budget. Okay, almost they weren't able to pass a law on budget. And what happened is that it was reenacted. Okay, but it was extended, but later on it was again granted. But it takes a very long time. Now, what is the first? Individual agencies prepare their estimates of expenditures, okay, or proposed budget for their succeeding year. Okay, so the agency in Cebu Normal, for example, the chairman, we prepare for the budget. Okay, the lowest is in the chairman. Chairman will look into the needs of the faculty. Okay, and then the department or the CAS, the college, will consolidate all the needs we have. But our office supplies will perhaps be prepared by the college because we have the same office supplies. Okay, and then submit these estimates or proposals contained, okay, in the required budget forms. The forms are actually provided by the DBM. All you have to do is to check, okay, the forms, the uniform forms, okay, which all agencies of the government is going to fill up, and they are going to consolidate it and submit it to the DBM. Okay, and then there is a deadline for it because, okay, there's a timeline, otherwise it will not be approved. Okay, and there will be a difficulty later on what budget that will be applicable. Okay, because under the law, if there is no budget approved, then the previous year's budget will be reenacted. Okay, and they do not want that because normally the previous year's budget is lower than what they requested, and there will be no more projects. Okay, so guidelines and timetable earlier set. Number 2, the agency justifies details of their proposed budget. Okay, the head of the agency, okay, take note of this word, justify the details. Now, the budget that they prepared, they're going to defend it in Congress, that it is indeed important and reasonable. Okay, if it is not important, then perhaps the budget will be slashed. There's one congressman because the one of the university, um, I will not mention because I'm going to record this one, and they might review this one. Are going to, okay, the meeting will end in 10 minutes. Upgrade now for 15 minutes. Okay, for a while. Um, so if this will be cut because it's only 40 minutes rather, okay, I thought it will still be extended because I had a meeting in Zoom and it was, the time was extended more than that, more than 40 minutes. Okay, I don't know, I might schedule again another Zoom. Okay, now the details of the congressman said that I will not give you budget, zero budget. What will happen to the agency which has zero budget? It is as if you abolish the agency. Of course, it is not allowed. How about now the new trend, that the new issue that they're going to give a lesser budget to human rights? Okay, probably what will happen is that it is as if they are abolishing human rights. Okay, but it is already provided by the constitution that there must be a group or a body that will protect the human rights. So they cannot do that. Otherwise, they will be violating the constitution. Now, I go to the third one. DBM reviews the consolidated proposed budget for the agencies. Okay, so DBM review the consolidated budget, proposed budget of all agency for the inclusion in the president proposed budget. Okay, for submission to Congress. So the DBM will consolidate all and then submit it to Congress. Okay. Agency explain the details. They're going to again to defend it in Congress this time. Okay, in a separate hearing in the House of Representatives and in the Senate as well. There are committees, okay, in both House of Representatives and Senate, which all these departments belong. Okay, like for example, education, Cebu Normal, we belong to Committee on Education. There is a person there who heads it, and he's the one who will chair whether the budget should be granted or not. Okay, if you're good in defending, then probably the budget will be approved without any slash of the budget. Okay, number 5, the president signs the appropriation bill into law, what is known as GAA. If he approves it all, then it will become a law. The president as well granted that item veto, meaning that if there's a certain item that he doesn't like, he can veto item only. Okay, that applies to tax, for example. Okay, there may be item veto. Now we go to what is government budget. Okay, in general, a government budget is a financial plan actually for a government for a given period, and the period refers to 1 year, one fiscal year. The one fiscal year starts in January 1 and ends in December 31. Okay, that is the fiscal year. Okay, so meaning starting from January 1, that is now the start of the fiscal year. Okay, from January 1, counting, adding 3 more months, that's called the first quarter. Okay, so the entire year is divided into 4 quarters. Okay, what's the purpose of that? Is for our economic department to see or project whether we can comply with the projected revenue and expenditures. Okay, because there are projects or programs allotted but without budget. Okay, so they may rely on what are the projected budget that may be that they may be collected, which shows that what is their sources are and how they will be generated and used over the fiscal period. The budget is government's key instrument for promoting socio-economic objectives. Okay, without budget, without collection from the Bureau of Internal Revenue and Bureau of Customs, probably there will be no social economic activities. And in the end, there will be no objectives that will be realized. Government budget also refers to the income, okay, expenditures and sources of borrowing of the national government. Now, what do you mean by income? Okay, of course, sources of income mostly from tax, and then we have expenditures, the spending of the money they collected. Okay, and the source of the borrowing. If it is not enough, there is deficit. The national government may borrow where other banks through the approval of the Central Bank of the Philippines. The board will convene through the initiative of the president that they need to borrow money from other agencies like World Bank or IMF. Okay, so that they use to achieve a national objective, strategies, and programs. Now, in section 22 of Article 7 of the Constitution states that the president, this is the one I've told you, submit to Congress within 30 days from opening of every regular session. The regular session starts with the SONA every year. Okay? He's going to submit the basis of general appropriation bill. If it is not enough, then the president actually may ask the monetary board. The monetary board is chaired by the governor of the Central Bank of the Philippines. The Central Bank of the Philippines, as you know, is the regulator of all banks, meaning all the money in the government is controlled by the monetary board or the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Okay, a budget of the budget expenditures and source of financing, including receipts from existing and proposed revenue measures. So this is going to propose where to get the money and to fund the expenditures. What is expenditure program? Are you still following?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, the recording states that I have 3 more minutes, okay? But I'm going to end perhaps in number 5. What is an expenditure program? The expenditure program is that portion of the national government, okay, that refers to the current operating expenditures, meaning the thing that they're going to pay, and the capital outlay. Capital outlay refers to the projects that is funded, okay? Also, what are these capital outlays? Like, they are not payment for employees, okay, not payment for electricity, but a project. It refers to buildings that may earn income. It's called capital outlay. Like a building of the new building of Cebu Normal, then the money come from the capital outlay necessary for the operation of the programs, projects, and activities of the various government departments and agencies. Okay. One more. I still have 1 minute before the recordings will end. Now, what is financing program? Financing program includes projected revenues. Okay. What the projected revenue? The thing that they may collect future collection of money from both existing and new measures. Okay. They're going to present where to get the money, the existing and the future source of money. Okay, the plan of borrowing, if it is not enough, then they will borrow money from some government, local government units may borrow money from other agency, like in Cebu City alone, they borrow money from Japan. Okay, to finance budgetary transactions and payment for debt of principal falling due. The local government units is even empowered due to local autonomy, they can actually enter into a contract with other agency or even foreign agreement, okay, provided that there is an assurance that they can pay. Okay, one of which is the SRP. It is funded by Japan. I think right now they are still paying for that amount, but I am sure they can pay for that. because of the income from the business that were built there. Okay. Now,